A few days ago, John Zinser, the director of development at AEG, released a new blog post titled, Publish Fewer New Games.
Yeah, the gist of the article is exactly what that headline would imply, which is that at AEG, they have decided to, going forward, publish fewer new games on a year-to-year basis. So rather than trying to put out, 15, 20 more games that are brand new every year, they are only going to be, say, publishing 5 or 6. They never have an exact number pinned down, but that's kind of the area they're looking for. In fact, they pointed out they only published 4 big new titles in 2018, so they've already begun this path. And they specify in that post, which you can read linked in the description below, there are 4 kind of pillars that they have in terms of saying no to different games and still being able to manage their cash flow. And I think one of the biggest, most important parts of this is their transparency about it, that they want to make this very much their company's mantra that's public and let people know that we're focusing on just a core set of titles each year that we really think are good, and outside of that, we're going to be saying no to a lot of other ones. Because you got to assume that a lot of people are pitching their titles to AEG, and they see a lot of games every year, and they talked about how it's hard sometimes. It's hard to say no because a lot of those games look so good, and how there are so many games that are released just in general that are out there, we've talked about that a lot before, about how these days, especially with Kickstarter, which AEG themselves have used in the past, there's just so much stuff that's out there. It's hard to make yourself stand out sometimes.
No, they did mention in the article that they even think they would ever use Kickstarter before, but now they are, as they said, with one of their titles like Thunderstone, and of course some of their upcoming ones as well. But they strictly said new games. They didn't say for expansions and stuff.
Right.
Which is, I think, important to mention because one of their games, Smash Up, that expansions are, I'm sure they're going to be pumping those out. In fact, behind you, we have the little VIP token. You might be on screen or not. I'm not sure if we cut that out on the shelf, but you can bring that to certain events for special little Smash Ups swag. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be a big focus for not just them, other companies doing as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of part of it is they don't want to be spread too thin, so this way they can take those games like Smash Up and really focus on giving them what they need, whether it be more expansions or, Thunderstone has like some also expansions, campaigns, or tournament play, or I think even more important than all of that, potentially just marketing push, that they don't want to have to worry about how do we make sure all our games get the best boost they can. We want you to really know, look, this is for this 4-month period, we're hyping up Tiny Towns, or we're hyping up whatever their next game is. And I think that says a lot. I love that they're being so open about it. I think it's very, very cool. He's been writing these blog posts on AEG's website for a little while now, and I love just hearing companies talk about that because the board game industry is pretty open about those things compared to others, but even still, it's rare to see that kind of thing from a big company, or however big AEG may or may not be from your perspective. But also as a consumer, I think it gives me a lot of confidence in an AEG game because I now have to think that if they're only releasing 4 or 5 titles a year, those must be the best games that they saw. So it's not just, that game might be good or it sounds interesting, but it makes me think that's really going to be one worth playing.
Well, more importantly, let's say I did decide to pick up whatever the next AEG title is. I feel like because they release so little, only a few new games, that if they're going to release more expansions or something, it's very likely my game will continue to be supported.
Right, yeah, that's true. It's not going to get lost in the shuffle that they're going to be like, this one sold better, so we're just going to stop supporting that. They kind of are putting themselves into a corner in a way where they're like, this is our game for this quarter, so we better make sure it's good and put out enough stuff for it, which also could be a little scary for them if a game doesn't sell well. If it turns out that somehow they just missed the mark and nobody likes a game, then they're out a lot of profits, it's definitely a risky thing.
That is true, but once you do get a game, if they get more games like Smash Up, and I think this is actually the Fantasy Flight model. They're able to cheat a little bit with like because they can get thrown Star Wars or Lord of the Rings on top of it for tag to buy. But like once you get that going, like I know you've joked about how with the LCG packs, they just keep releasing them.
Yeah.
That gives you a much more steady income flow because once everyone has their smash up, in this case, for example, or whatever the new game may be, the next expansion is like, yeah, they're probably going to want to tack it on. Or at least I think a significant portion because they're like, yeah, I want to play with the new stuff.
I also think that AEG, based on how long they've been around and how, for the most part, I mean, sure, not all of their games have been home runs, but in general, I think of them as a pretty strong company. I think I have faith that they've seen enough and they know enough and they test enough to know maybe not the game that I will like, but know that this is a game that most people will like and will sell.
I do wonder because I believe it's AEG, unless I'm mixing this up. They have the Big in Japan series.
Yeah,
if that's coming to an end.
That's true because they had quite a few titles under their belt for that, and maybe that's just going to be more of a once a year. Is one of their titles is that?
Yeah, because I know one of their games, I forget the name of it. I think it has soccer in the title. I'm blanking, but we have played it once. But I know that was like really big in Japan, but I don't see it talked about or played a lot here. So I wonder if that's part of the issue too. They're like, this was big, so we thought it'd translate, but for whatever reason, it didn't.
Yeah, could be something to do with international markets. I also wonder. I don't think they specifically said, how much more they're committing to Kickstarter. If only doing a few games a year might make it easier for them in some ways financially because they can put, know exactly what they're putting into each game each year. But Kickstarter is always such a good resource. I wouldn't be surprised if we see one or two more from them there.
It is a very risky one, I feel like, especially from the bigger company. Because what happens is, let's say they release a new game through Kickstarter, and a bunch of people back it. So they make a bunch of copies and a bunch more. But then distributors are like, people already bought it. Why should I buy your extra copies that were going to sit on my shelf? Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a very risky thing. I mean, sure, you could have a Gloomhaven event.
Yeah.
But you might not. And I think a Gloomhaven's a less likely than a more likely for when it comes to the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Well, I hope that more companies take this approach. And I suspect that more companies might find that they have to take this approach.
Well, I think a bunch already are. I mean, Stonemaier, I think. They got Wingspan that came out, but they're not known for just throwing out a lot of games,
That's true, but you're always going to have basically most things under the Asmodee umbrella where they pump out a lot more.
Well, does even Days of Wonder pump out that much?
I mean, that's a perfect counterexample. You're right. They're very slim. But I do think you're going to start seeing your Z-Mans, your Fantasy Flights, start to have to scale back because there's just not enough people to buy every game.
They're going to circle the wagons?
Yeah, the Z-Man in my mind is one of the most obvious of, I feel like every other week they announce something new. Well, Cryptozoic has a lot.
They also bought the love letter and stuff from AEG.
And when AEG sold off Love Letter, I remember we were thinking, why would they do that? It's so popular. And maybe this was them saying, we're just not into that pushing out a ton of stuff anymore, and they're trying to offload some of that. Mm-hmm. And we'll see. It seems like it was paying off for them in 2018, and we'll see if it continues to do so in 2019. Talk to us in the comments if you're an AEG employee and you want to give us your opinion on it, how excited you are, or if you're just a regular customer, consumer out there, and if you're a big AEG fan, if you think this will help them out, if you think this will help with their quality level overall, or you're already happy with it, so you're fine either way. Talk to us down there. Also follow us on social media and all that stuff, and check out the rest of our channel. That'd be good.
But until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Roll for Crit.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome board game content from Roll for Crit.
And please leave a comment. We're lonely.